guys, and welcome back to the Cruel Corner. We're here once again in this wonderful ranty corner for all things Formula E. So the Mexican or Mexico E-Prix has come to a close, and what can be said about that race? Once again, another exciting race, this Gen 3.5 era with the four-wheel drive attack mode, more power to use as well. Really has thrown an interesting dynamic into the mix, hasn't it? Admittedly, the first few laps were a little bit stale. It was a little bit more line astern. The race pace, this race was more fast-paced from the get-go. I used pace there a lot, didn't I? But yeah, there was there was certainly a lot more line astern, not as hectic from like lap one as it was last time out. So yeah, that was a little bit cautious at the start, I would say, from most drivers, but then once we got into the latter stages, it certainly hotted up. There's some fantastic opportunistic overtakes and manoeuvres up and down the field. There's been some drivers really excelling so far these first couple of races. There have been some drivers that have been massively unlucky as well. So we're going to divulge all of that right here, right now. So if you've never seen this series before, I award the drivers a maximum of 10 points based on their overall race weekend's performance, and I go all the way down to 0 if they have a particularly bad one. Take a look out for bonus points though. They're sometimes an offer for some drivers to do something extra special during a race, and on the rare occasion I do award minus points to those drivers to do something extra special, but for all the wrong reasons. It's early days yet on the Cruel Corner standings, but let's take a look at them anyway. They're on the screen now for you to have a look at. We are simply one round in, of course, into a 16-round season. I'm really looking forward to it this year. Really expecting big things. So see where your driver that you support is currently based on this series. And after this weekend's performance, do you think they'll move up a little bit? Move down a little bit? As I say, really early days yet, but I'm sure the pecking order will start to form soon. So without further ado, let's kick things off with the race winner then, shall we? Ollie Rowland in the Nissan. Wow, oh wow, oh wow, oh wow. That was absolutely fantastic. What a drive, what a drive. Got himself inside that top three throughout the whole of the race pretty much, and was in 4th place, just taking his second attack mode, which was a great little advantage for him there because all the other cars around him had already used theirs. So he got that 4 minutes to catch back up from the deficit he'd lost at the start of the race, and being in 4th position and taking the attack mode, could climb up to the back of them, crawl up to the back of them and just breeze past them. That's what we thought, but no, we had a safety car intervention for David Beckman that had trouble in the squabble with Lucas Di Grassi, which was unfortunate. Safety car came out, and you're like, oh no, that's Ollie Rowland's chance ruined because all of his attack mode will be wasted behind the safety car. However, the safety car came in, Ollie Rowland had 1 minute and 10 seconds left on the clock, something like that, of his attack mode, and on the restart, he bloody went for it, didn't he? He went for it. He swooped past Jake Dennis, Antonio Felix da Costa and Pascal Verline up into 1st place, and then guess what? In the space of about 10 corners, we'd gone from where we restarted the race to where we ended up with another safety car intervention. Had he not done what he did right there and then, by going from 4th to 1st in that split second opportunity where he had 1 minute of his attack mode left, then he wouldn't have won that race. But he bloody did it, didn't he? What a stunning lap that was. Probably one of the best laps in Formula E. And I'm not just saying that. That was absolutely stunning. So Oliver Rowland for me this weekend, it's 11. It is 11 points. It has to be a bonus point for that lap alone. That won him the race. It really did. And yes, we know the attack mode has its advantages. It wasn't as advantageous as what it was like last time out, but it still played the part. But he played that beautifully, making every available opportunity count to get past the 3 cars ahead to take victory. Stunning effort, Ollie, and then to hold him off at the end as well. 11 points to you. 2nd place, we come to Antonio Felix da Costa in the Porsche. 2 for 2 so far. I'm talking about him in 2nd place for the 2nd time this season. Absolutely fantastic stuff. What a turnaround in fortune for Da Costa. Compare it to last season where he had no points on the board, was struggling. This time around, P2 on the grid and P2 in his finishing position. A little bit hard done by the greatness that was Ollie Rowland, because Da Costa deserved that victory. He played the team game for Verline at the beginning. And then how the attack modes worked out with Da Costa taking his that little bit later than Verline. Da Costa got ahead of Verline in that scenario. But he played the team game early on, so I'm fine with Da Costa having the advantage later, because had it not been for the team play, the strategic play between the two of them, they'd have probably both lost out to Jake Dennis, whereas as it was, P2, P3, they'd have been wanting a 1-2 after lining up 1-2 on the grid, I am sure, but nonetheless, a fantastic effort by Da Costa. Like I say, played the team game and then went for his own glory. Fell just a little bit short, but I'm not holding that against him whatsoever, because that was a great drive once again by Da Costa, proving that Porsche deserved to keep him, and I'm glad that Porsche gave him this opportunity to stay on the grid. You think where we were this time last season, a few rounds in, there's talks of him getting replaced mid-season due to how poor his performance was, and then he found his feet the second half. He got bullshitted all over by the FIA. Well, none of that's happened at the minute. He's hit the ground running, 2 P2 positions, no penalties from the FIA as yet, but I'm sure they'll be coming for him. And overall, just a fantastic performance by Da Costa once again. It's a perfect 10 from me for Antonio Felix Da Costa for that. That was simply lovely, to quote a certain famous driver within Formula 1. But it was a great drive, and nothing can take away from that performance at all. Unlucky not to win, but out-strategised and just out-raced by a superb driver on form right now in Ollie Rowland. And there's nothing wrong with that. Da Costa, stunning effort, stunning drive, P2, 10 points. Third place, we come to Pascal Verline, the pole sitter, of course, this race. So getting himself 3 points there on the board before the race even begins is a great start. Again, a great start to his championship campaign, this race in particular. Of course, nil points in the first round after an accident with Nick Cassidy, after looking like he was going to be a potential podium finisher there, maybe even a race winner there. But here we go, hitting the ground running. Again, not the end result he'd have wanted. Starting from pole position, he'd have wanted to win that, and in the early stages of the race, Porsche had the comfortable advantage. As mentioned, Da Costa was used as a bit of a cork in the bottle, so Verline could take his attacks and things like that, and he could defend from the other cars behind attack, just to inconvenience him that little bit for a couple of corners. And then, as it worked out then, Da Costa played his team role, and then he got the attack mode later, was allowed to overtake Da Costa. I'm sure had we been in a situation without any safety car interventions and had the threat of Rowland maybe gone away in that situation, if the pack didn't bunch up, would there been a team order to reverse the order so Verline won over Da Costa? Not too sure on that one actually, because as I mentioned, both drivers played the team game when they needed to, and then fought for the self at the end. P3, 15 points on the board, of course, and 3 points for the pole position is a great way to start the season for Verline, of course, after the dismal round 1. Very early days, though, as mentioned. 14 more rounds ahead to go, so it is early days. Pascal Verline, 9 points from me. 9 points for him for that. Great effort, good drive, solid. Maybe had his teammate not played the team game as much, he could have lost out to the likes of Jake Dennis behind, but I'm not criticising him too much for that. I just think when you look at the overall package, yeah, pole position was nice, P3 finish was good, but Da Costa did an all-round better job at managing everything, I should say, even if he did get mugged at that little stage where he got overtaken by about 3 cars, but nonetheless, 9 points to Verline. Great effort by him. Next up, 4th place, just missing out on the points. It is Jake Dennis in the first of the Andrettis. Again, another driver that's a potential championship protagonist, finally picking up some points this race after nil points in the first race due to his car not being safe and breaking down and causing a red flag. All a bit of a mess, wasn't it? But this time around, much more better fortune for Jake Dennis on the verge of podiums. Here in P4, it's 12 points on the board. At least it's something. His race looks like it could have been a podium potential, absolutely. A lot of drivers had that in them this weekend. But Jake Dennis, certainly the lead Andretti driver, did a solid job overall. Nothing overly special or spectacular like the 3 cars ahead of him, but I still think he deserves 8 points on the board for what he did this weekend. Overall, great, impressive performance. I don't mind that at all. I think he did a good job with the equipment it was given. Fell just short of a podium, but he'll be looking at that for Jeddah, for the double header. Or is it whatever it is? Where are we? Not Jeddah, is it? Is it Jeddah? I don't know. Anyway, I'm talking shit. But yes, 8 points to Jake Dennis. A solid weekend overall. Before we get to P5, I'd just like to say I am really busy with work at the moment, and all I have seen is a bit of qualifying and the race. So if anyone crashed in qualifying and practice and stuff, and I've missed it out, I'm sorry. I've not seen it. So just bear that in mind with the scores I'm awarding. I'm mainly focusing on the race alone this time around. Obviously I know what positions they started, but I don't know how it worked out in qualifying, stuff like that, so forgive me. Fifth place, we come to Jean-Eric Verne in the first of the DS Penskys. What could be said for Verne this weekend? Once again, doing the job he can with the equipment he's been given, I would say, for Verne. The nearly man last season, it looks like he's going to be the nearly man again this season. The Porsche powertrain, the Nissan powertrain, once again look like they are the formidable force. The Stellantis group powertrain in the back of that car doesn't look bad, but it just seems to lack that little bit of something like we saw last time out and last season out. But P5 for Jean-Eric Verne, not a bad effort, it must be said. Think I scored him unjustly last race because I think he got caught up in a shenanigan, didn't he, at some point? I missed out talking about that. But this time around, no shenanigans for him. A solid P5 finish. It's a result. It's a good result on the board. It's going to take a little bit, though, to beat them Porsches and Nissans, isn't it, looking at that? But nonetheless, 8 points to Jean-Eric Verne. A solid weekend overall. Didn't see much of him, but I think in Formula E that's probably a good thing because you're either doing the dramatics up at the front fighting for the win or you're down at the back and in the mid-pack squabbling, fighting, losing bits of wings. Didn't want that. It was a quiet race, but picked up a solid amount of points. 8 to Verne. In 6th place, we come to the DS Pensky of Maxi Gunter, of course. Max Gunter finishing just 1 place behind his teammate. Fantastic effort. Good all the points by the DS Pensky squad. Gunter seems to have settled in. I believe also I scored him unfairly as well in the last race, if I remember rightly, because he got involved in shenanigans as well. There was that much going on that race. It was difficult to keep up, wasn't it? But nonetheless, Gunter, again, solid effort, matching his teammate. Can't finish in the same position, can you? But you can finish 1 place ahead or behind. This time around it was 1 place behind, but still a nice pickup of points for the DS Pensky squad. And it's going to be 7.5 on the board to Maxi Gunter. Again, very much like Verne this weekend. Didn't see much of him. Again, I'm sorry if he crashed any time, but 7.5 on the board to Gunter I think is fair. Don't think it was as qualifying as Verne, and then obviously the end result in the race, 1 position behind, but still a good all of points for the squad there. And they'll be looking at trying to update their software wherever possible to try and close that gap up to Porsche in speed and efficiency. But at the minute, they're just falling short. 7.5 to Gunter. Then we come to the first of the Maseratis in Stoffel Vandor. So for Stoffel Vandor, sort of doing the job I expected of him, really. It's difficult, isn't it? Because you always sort of expect that Maserati car to be that little bit higher up. We saw glimpses of great pace last season, and we have seen glimmer of hope since Maserati entered the sport that there's pace in that car, but they just can't quite get the end results. This time around, though, I think here finishing just behind the other 2 Stellantis cars, I think that's a fair enough effort. I think that proves that this is where the pace of the Stellantis group is. The bottom half, mid half of the top 10. There's a really loud train going past the house. Well, that was annoying if you heard it. If you didn't hear it, you won't see this bit. But, So to finish behind the other Stellantis group cars, I don't think it's a bad effort. I think that just shows where the pace of this car is. For Stoffel Vandor, though, again, just not overly impressive, is it? I just expect a little bit more. But he's never adapted to the Gen 3 car. He doesn't look to be quietly gelling with the Gen 3 Evo car either. It's a difficult one. I'm going to give Stoffel Vandor a couple more races just to see where we lie. But let's not forget he's a champion in this sport, but he just can't adapt to the new regulations of car, unfortunately. It's 6.5 on the board for Stoffel Vandor. Not criticising him at all with that score, but there's so many more drivers up and down the field that did better, and I think that has to be noted. 6.5 to Stoffel Vandor. In 8th place, we come to Nick de Vries in the Mahindra. Once again, Mahindra proving that their powertrain is quite strong this season. They went into this season with high expectations and hope that they were going to do well, and they came off a fantastic double points finish in the last round. Really, really well done. Did they score 18 points between them? The 2 cars? It was stunning, wasn't it? This time around, didn't quite work out for Mortara. Nick de Vries on the bottom half here of the top 10, but I think judging by the cars again that finished ahead, it's a respectable finishing position where they should be finishing now. It's nice to see him up here. It's nice to see him squabbling for the points, getting the good qualifyings on the fringes of the top 10, getting into the head-to-heads where possible. They're always on the fringes of that, aren't they? If they're not quite getting in, they're on the fringes and lining up in between that like 11th to 14th area, whereas normally Mahindra you'd expect to be right at the back. So, a good effort by De Vries. If I remember rightly, he had a penalty for impeding. He impeded Sber, didn't he, and got dropped 3 places. So if I remember rightly, he qualified 11th, started 14th. Correct me if I'm wrong again, I'm just going on memory. But yeah, De Vries did a really good job overall to pick up 8th place and 4 points on the board. And it's 8 points from me. 8 points to Nick De Vries for that, because I think that's a solid effort. Again, in a car that's probably not as efficient as the others, but it is doing a great job, isn't it? It's doing a great job. A couple more rounds will figure out the overall pack, minus any dramas and incidents and chaos. I mean, it was so difficult to judge the pack at all in the last race because of how chaotic that one was. I mean, cars that had drive-throughs finish on the podium, that's how bizarre that one was. But this time around, it's more of the pecking order you're sort of seeing. You're seeing where the powertrains are lining and ranking up. And for De Vries, it's 8 points on the board to him. Mahindra looking like a regular point scoring car in the fringes of the top 10. This 7th to 10th area, I think, is theirs for the taking more often than not, if strategies are right and if they get the right amount of luck. 8 to De Vries. 9th place, we come to Nico Muller in the second of the Andrettis. I don't think this quite does Nico Muller justice, I've got to be honest. If I remember rightly, qualifying was difficult for Muller. I can't remember if there were any penalties though, so again, I apologise. But nonetheless, he was certainly out-qualified by Jake Dennis and had to make a charge through the pack, so he took his 2 attack modes quite early. However, on taking his attack modes, he was only really getting up to the back of Jake and then not doing anything else with it. It was like he was sacrificed to favour Jake, because Jake had obviously got the opportunity to potentially win, get on the podium, etc. Nico Muller had to use the attack modes early to get himself up the order. Overtaking wasn't as regular as it was last time out. And then once he'd used his attack modes, bit of a sitting duck. So I think there was a strategic element there to get Nico Muller inside the top 10. However, I do think the strategic element was also to help and assist Jake Dennis and use Muller as a bit of a scapegoat. If Muller picked up points, that was a bonus. So he's done that. I do feel Andretti will be happy with 9th place for Nico Muller, considering where he started, how his race played out with the strategy, and him picking up some points in the end. I think that's a good effort by him. Nico Muller, it's 7 points from me, a solid 7. Again, great team effort, great team game. I'm not saying 9th place is where Nico Muller should be finishing. He deserves so much more than that. He just needs to string a good solid weekend together, a consistent weekend, get a good qualifying under his belt, not have any issues or dramas, and hit the ground running. I think he's a great asset for that second car, that second seat at the Andretti squad. And I think his opportunities and day will come. I just think this time around, strategic elements at play, and also the elements of favouring Jake Dennis, who was guaranteed a lot more points this weekend. Finishing inside the top 10, I think, is respectable when he used these attack modes as early as he did. And it's 7 on the board to Nico Muller. And then we come to the last of the point scorers in Jake Hughes, his first point on the board for his new venture at Maserati. Initially crossed the line in P11, but Taylor Barnard received a 5-second time penalty post-race, and that elevated, of course, Jake Hughes here into the top 10. So still a Brit scoring the final points paying position. Bit of a lonely one for Jake Hughes, must be said. Again, didn't really see much of him. Bit like the DS Penskys, however, they were, of course, a lot further up the grid. And Jake Hughes was initially just missed out on the points, but scraped into score 1. So at least that's something on the board. Gets his season going, gets Maserati's season going quite nicely with a double points finish there. But, you know, it's difficult to judge, isn't it? It would have been nice to see him a little bit further up, maybe with his teammate, of course. But yeah, overall for Jake Hughes this weekend, a middle of road 5 from me for Jake Hughes. I think that's a fair score based on how his qualifying went, how his race went. A middle of the road, nothing special, nothing spectacular, but at least we didn't see him get involved in any dramas. Of course, the last race out, was just very unlucky with the incident he got caught up in with Boemi. But yeah, this time around, it's a middle of road 5. Wouldn't have been points had it not been for a penalty, but kept himself out of trouble. Just missing out on the points, unfortunately. We come to Robin Freitz in the first of the Envision cars. Now, this is, I believe, if I'm right in saying, the first car on this list that received a penalty after qualifying. If I remember rightly, the Envision squad were thrown out for a throttle position error. The throttle over-throttled too much. Not that it gained him any advantage, but both cars were thrown out. So, of course, Robin Freitz, no matter where he qualified, started towards the back of the grid. I can't remember if it was 20th or 21st, but it's all much of a muchness, isn't it? But nonetheless, finishing here in P11, of course, crossing the line P12, as mentioned, Taylor Barnard's penalty, but you know that. It's not points even with the penalty ahead, which is a great shame. For Robin Freitz this weekend, we didn't see much of them. I think they went into maximum saving mode at the start of the race. You could just see them, they were at the back of the pack. Quite happy to sit there. They've got nothing to lose. Their weekend's been hampered by a technical error that wasn't the driver's fault as such. The team were on the back foot there, so they just had to sort of go with the flow, try and save energy. It didn't quite work out. The pace of the race was just too much that they couldn't overtake in regular conditions over slower cars. They had to get those attack modes, had to time them right, and it didn't quite work out on a few occasions for a few cars. But Robin Freitz to finish P11, it's a good recovery from the back of the grid. Shame it's not points, and that's a shame, but Robin Freitz, it's a Miller 05 from me. It's sort of like treating him as a retirement, really, because it's not fair, is it? He was at the back of the grid. You can't judge him fairly. The race was totally different to the last time out, and just an overall difficult one to judge. But Robin Freitz kept his nose clean, managed to gain at least 10 places, and did a solid job with that. 5-2 Robin Freitz. Then we come to the next car that received a penalty in qualifying for the same issue. It's Nick Cassidy, of course. So again, I believe it's the throttle mapping was over-mapped, and it meant that actually the team lost time, but because it's outside the technical regulations and outside the operating window that it should be, slung to the back of the grid, and I know Nick Cassidy did start 22nd and stone dead last, so very much control-alt-repeat of what Mitch Evans did in the first round, of course, starting at the back. He won the race, though. Nick Cassidy could only manage his way to 13th on the road, 12th in the end. Shame, really. Real shame. If you'd have told Nick Cassidy at the start of this season that you'd have this happen to you, you'd be a bit gutted, wouldn't you? You'd be a bit gutted. The nearly man on so many occasions in the Formula E Championship now, as is his teammate Mitch Evans. It's not looking like it's going to be their year this year, is it, at the moment? When the way you look at it, yeah, Mitch won the first race, but he was out of luck this race, and then you look at how consistent the Porsches are, and you look at how Ollie Rowland, had it not been for the pit drive-through he got at the end of the race in the first round, he could have had 2 wins out of 2. Cassidy's not looked like that at any point, has he, this season so far? So again, early days, difficult to tell. But Nick Cassidy's still nothing on the board. Great shame that, isn't it? And 2 rounds in, difficult. Again, for Nick Cassidy, it's a Miller 05 from him. Yeah, he gained 10 places. That was a great effort, respectable. I don't blame him for that. But again, chucked to the back of the grid due to no fault of his own. It's a difficult one to judge. It's a shame he couldn't scrape into the points, but that's life, unfortunately. Jaguar, get your act together. 5-2, Nick Cassidy. Finishing in a little lucky for some P13, we come to Norman Nato in the Nissan. That's right, no, Norman Nato in the Nissan. And there we have it, the first lottery of the week is awarded to Norman Nato in the Nissan. Now, that's another N. Jesus. He avoided and escaped a lottery of the week last time out due to the fact I wasn't aware that he took someone out of the race, I believe it was. And he ended up with a post-race penalty after the points due to that and stuff like that. And it was just a mess, really. So the post-race happened, and I didn't know it happened at the time, so he ended up outside the points. And yeah, that was a shame. So yeah, Norman Nato probably should have got one last time out, but because of how chaotic that race was and how topsy-turvy and quite literally upside down it was for some drivers, I decided to leave Lotterer to one side. This race, however, Norman Nato in the Nissan. Ollie Rowland goes and bloody wins the thing. Norman Nato at no point this weekend looked like he was going to be in the points. He was outside of them all the time. Didn't do a very good job at all. Norman, I rate him. I really do. But he's had a couple of difficult races to start the season off with, hasn't he? No points on the board for him as yet, while his teammate has secured a victory and was very unlucky not to secure a minimum of a podium last time out as well. Yeah, Norman Nato in the Nissan gets a Lotterer of the week. The first one of the season. And I believe it was probably owed from last time anyway, but this time around, nothing special or spectacular happened this weekend for him. And it must be a lotterer for that. Then we come to Taylor Barnard in the McLaren. What a shame. Crossed the line P10 after qualifying himself P19, and that was on his error. He made a mistake in qualifying, just didn't have the pace in the car, which was a great shame. But again, rookie relatively speaking. Only completed a few Formula E races under his belt, of course, and got his way up into P10 and then had a post-race penalty of 5 seconds. I don't know why he got that 5-second time penalty. I'm not sure. I can only imagine it's contact or something, but we didn't really see anything of that. So, yeah, an odd one, but he got a 5-second post-race penalty and ultimately tumbled from 10th to 14th here, so it's a shame. Taylor Barnard, it's 4 points from me this week, and I think there's certainly a lot more in that McLaren car than we saw of it. Should have been higher up in qualifying, should have maybe got into the duels, even if he got eliminated at the first stages of the duels. I think the McLaren car had that pace, should have finished around where the Stellantis cars were. I would say that would be fair. That would be a fair judgment and assessment. So, yeah, somewhere around that 5th to 8th area, that car should have finished. He got it into a point, then got a post-race penalty. 4 points Taylor Barnard for that. Not the impressive performance that we saw from him first time out, but nonetheless, it's something, isn't it? It's still building on what he's done. He's a relative rookie. I'll allow him. 4 points to Taylor Barnard. Next up, in 15th place, we come to Zane Maloney, which is a great shame to see him finish so far down outside the points, considering he got himself into P9 in qualifying and was running round on the fringes of the top 10. Had a difficult middle phase of the race, didn't he? And that's where he sort of lost the timings. I don't know if he was an early adopter of the attack mode and then, of course, fell victim to that later in the race. But yeah, 15th place overall. Of course, the Lola App Squad, new team to the grid. Well, it's not a new team, but it's a new powertrain, isn't it? The Lola car on the grid, the new adapter to the Formula E paddock. So it's very much a learning curve for them still. But I think this is a respectable finishing position for him. It's just a shame it's not a little bit higher up. I think points is still a very, very big stretch at the moment, but yeah, over single lap pace, looking like they've got a top 10 worthy car there over single lap. Need to get the efficiency under the belt now, need to adapt on that and learn how to get the efficiency and the most out of the car and out of the tyres and things. But yeah, overall, I think it's 6.5 to Zane Maloney for that. Was relatively impressed. He got involved in the little skirmish at the start, didn't he, with Dan Tinum tipping him sideways and giving him a half spin. But he had a car on his inside as well, which I think was Hughes in the Maserati. So it was all much of a muchness. I don't fully blame Zane Maloney for that. It was just racing. 3 into 1 was never going to go. But yeah, Zane Maloney, 6.5 this weekend. Shame he didn't finish higher up. I think a top 12 was maybe possible there. Points would have been a little bit of an exaggeration and a little bit of a stretch, but 15th just doesn't quite seem to do it justice for him. But yeah, overall, strong weekend, encouraging, build on that from there. 6.5 to Zane Maloney. Next up, we come to Dan Tinum in the first, is it the first of the Kiro race squad team thing? Cupra, Bobson? Yeah, got a new livery now. They're not just all bright yellow. They've got a bit of gold in there as well. I think it looked quite nice, actually. It looked quite nice. Reminded me of the bit of gold that Mahindra had a couple of seasons back. Which one? That one. Yeah, gold at the front. But yeah, either way. Yeah, but yeah, it looked nice. The updated livery looked nice, just not all yellow. That was quite good. Again, Dan Tinum, solid enough qualifying, respectable, top 15 I think it was for him. Then got tagged into a spin at the start as mentioned. Had to make a pit stop. I think it was a puncture for him, which was a shame. Got back out. Almost went a lap down, but didn't quite. And then the safety car came out. That didn't help him. He was still half a lap behind when that one went. When the lights went out for that safety car, he must have been feeling hard done by. But then don't worry, because a lap later, the safety car came out again. Dan Tinum crossed managed to get back up onto the back of the pack and doesn't finish last of the runners due to penalties. And I think he finished ahead of a couple of cars on merit as well that were running out of energy towards the end. So not a bad effort by Dan Tinum. Again, middle of row 5 from him. Very difficult to judge. Of course, as a result of the penalties received post-race and things like that, the fact he was put into a half spin at the start, it was very much game over from there. But encouraging to see him not lose his head over the radio. He came over the radio like, guys, what are we doing now? Are we just going into, are we going to park the car or, you need to tell me because we need to see what we're doing here. Instead, they decided to go for like a test program basically from that point on. And that test program worked out quite well. No more damage, no more contacts, finish ahead of a couple of cars on merit, finish ahead of the cars that received post-race penalties. It's okay. 5 to Tinum. Next up, we come to Sebastian Buemi in the second of the Envision cars. He received a 10-second post-race time penalty for not completing all of his attack modes come the end of the checkered flag. That second safety car absolutely ruined any opportunity for the cars that had 4 minutes or more left of attack mode left to use up. They completely scuppered their chances. By the time that checkered flag fell, they'd still got a couple of minutes left on the clock, so that was unfortunate. It's going to be 3 points to Buemi from me. Didn't climb his way up through the field as impressively as Robin Freitz. Robin was already ahead of him anyway. And then, of course, we had the post-race penalty. Oh well. Oh dear. Shucks, I guess. But, yeah, Envision, a weekend to forget once again. Their own error in qualifying pushed the cars to the back of the grid. And then the drivers tried to get the way through. Buemi didn't do quite as good a job getting the way through as Robin Freitz did. And then a post-race penalty at the end due to a chance. You know, a chance. They were hoping for a safety car late on, which did happen. They didn't want that safety car to then happen immediately a lap after, because that scuppered all chances of a good result there, because they weren't able to finish their attack mode. 3 to Buemi. Next up, we come to Sam Bird in the second of the McLarens. It's short and sweet. It's 3 points to Sam Bird as well. Qualifying, he got blocked by Nick De Vries, which was unfortunate. Bit of an error there by De Vries and the team not to allow him, you know, the communication between the two of them to sort that out. But Sam Bird, nonetheless, was looking like he was going to be okay, potentially fringing the points, was helping his teammate out at one stage as Barnard went through on attack mode. Then the favour was reversed. So again, good team strategic play there. Then the race itself sort of came undone. He had a bit of contact. He had De Vries up his inside in the Mahindra, and he had Mortara on his outside, also in the Mahindra. And as De Vries tried to get through, but Bird had nowhere to go and caught the back of Mortara's car, which gave Mortara an unfortunate puncture. That sort of sums up Mortara's luck that he had last season, to be honest with you. And they gave Bird a 5-second time penalty for causing a collision. I think that was very harsh. I thought it was close racing. I don't think Bird could have put his car anywhere else. I mean, he can't just back out of it, can he? You know, it was his corner at that point. De Vries had done a late lunge on him. It was sort of a reactive move of De Vries coming through that caught the rear tyre of Mortara on Bird's front wing. So yeah, very unfortunate. 5-second time penalty. From there, he played rear gunner to Taylor Barnard, of course, because that car then had the track position and didn't have any penalties. But as it was, it came undone for Bird. I don't know quite what happened for him to finish so low down, but I think they just sort of decided to save the car then towards the end and just get it to the flag. So yeah, it's 3 points to Sam Bird. Difficult weekend overall. Not the weekend McLaren were hoping for after a 3-4 finish in the first round. Here they are this time around, nil points. Shame for that, shame for McLaren, but hopefully more to come in the next round in Saudi Arabia. Fingers crossed for that. Or Diriyah. Is it Diriyah? I don't know. Just tell me. I'm sick of trying to guess. But yeah, 3 points to Sam Bird. Difficult one. Next up, we come to the unfortunate Eduardo Mortara, as already mentioned, had a puncture in the race due to contact with Sam Bird. No fault of Eduardo Mortara's. I personally don't think it was any fault of Sam Bird either. Just close, hard racing in the mid-pack. De Vries had a bit of a lunge. He was in attack mode. He went for it. It was a move that was on, I would say. I don't think De Vries did anything overly wrong. It's just racing, isn't it? Sometimes you see massive contact and the cars keep going with no issue. This was merely a clip, but he just clipped that rear tyre at the wrong angle, gave Mortara the puncture, had to pit, almost went a lap down, and then, of course, then on the race restart, he managed to catch back up to the back of the crocodile a bit like Dan Tinum, but he could make no more forward progress as he would also fall victim and fall foul of having 4 minutes attack mode left. There wasn't 4 minutes left of the race, unfortunately. So he ended up then with a post-race time penalty, dropping him here of 10 seconds. So, yeah, all much of a muchness, unfortunately. Sums up Mortara's weekend this weekend with that one. Just got to the back of the grid and caught back up to the back of the pack and thought, right, I've got some attack mode left. Let's see what I can do. Oh, no, I can't. I can't do anything because I've got 4 minutes left of attack mode and there's only like 2 minutes left of the race. Great stuff. So, yeah, very unfortunate for Mortara this weekend. And for that reason, it's 4 points on the board to him. Then we come to Lucas Di Grassi in the second of the App Lola cars. Very, very difficult weekend by Di Grassi overall once again. Out-qualified by his teammate, was out-raced by his teammate at stages. Together, they did come together at some points. It must be said, himself and Zane Maloney, you could see in that sort of mid-pack, the 14th to 16th area. Squabbling about a bit together, but then Di Grassi fell backwards. He had contact with David Beckman. I don't think that was really Di Grassi's fault, to be honest with you there. I just think it was close, hard racing. De Grassi very much got the corner. He just sort of outbraked himself a little bit, getting to the corner. I think Beckman should have been a little bit more aware of that. Don't know if that caused any damage to De Grassi's car, but again, he didn't use any of his attack mode, so everyone else couldn't make 4 minutes. They got penalties for 4 minutes worth of attack mode, that they could only use 2. De Grassi had used absolutely none of his attack mode, so he had a full 8 minutes to try and use up in 2 minutes. It wasn't going to happen. He tumbled to the back of the pack, and here he is. It's an unfortunate 2 to De Grassi this weekend. Shame for him. Qualifying wasn't as good as his teammate. The race itself, they sort of met in the middle, but Zane Maloney had that edge over him, I would say. Had that little bit of contact, which was unfortunate. And then, I don't know if it was a strategic error, I don't know if it was a car issue of not being able to take the attacks and wasn't securing the loops as he went through. I don't know. We'll find out later, I'm sure. But 2 points to De Grassi. Tough weekend once again. Maybe announcing his retirement soon? Who knows? Then we come to the list of retirements on this list. Unfortunately, both of these drivers were the ones that got involved in the safety car interventions. So the second safety car intervention, which happened later in the race, of course, that was for Mitch Evans. He was very, very unlucky. Nico Muller, I'm not sure if he had an issue coming out of one of the chicanes, or whether he was squeezed or we just didn't quite see it. But Muller had to lift off. They came out of the chicane, floored it flat, and then all of a sudden Muller lifted, and obviously Mitch Evans was full throttle, climbed over the back of the Andretti, broke his front right suspension, wasn't it? The wing was off and everything. Muller lucky to keep going actually after that, and then that of course meant that he was stationary, out of the race, unfortunate. Mitch Evans was just in 7th, wasn't he? He was just Mr. 7th place. He was like Nico Hülkenberg this weekend of a few years ago in Formula 1, where wherever I looked at the timing screen, it was in P7. So I think Jaguar would have been in for a tough time this weekend anyway. I'm not saying Mitch Evans was ever going to be a podium contender or a race winner this time around. I think that was out of Jaguar's hands. But I do think a top 5 was maybe possible, judging by what we saw. But unfortunately it all came to blows with just a few laps remaining, which was unfortunate. So as you know, a maximum retirement can score on my series is 5 points for a retirement, and Mitch Evans is going to get 3 of those. I think 3 for Mitch Evans is fair. It wasn't a superb weekend. It certainly wasn't Brazil last time out, was it? He got a difficult race under his hands, and I think had he probably finished in the top 5, he'd maybe got about 7 points on the board from me. It wouldn't have been anything ridiculously special, would it? So I think 3 for a retirement is fair on that. It's harsh because it wasn't necessarily his fault why he was out, but I think it sums up how good some drivers have had this race and how bad the others have been in terms of unfortunateness, in terms of pace, and just not doing anything special. But yeah, Mitch Evans, a difficult weekend. 3 points on the board to him. And then last but by no means least, we come to David Beckman, the first driver to cause the first safety car, so the first to retire in the race. The last that we're going to talk about it on the list, of course. Yeah, unfortunately for David Beckman, he was running round. He had a good race, to be fair, and this is why he avoids a lottery, because whenever I saw him on the timing screen, he was always in that 8th to 12th area. Now, I'm not going to say if he'd have not had the contact with De Grassi, it was going to be points. By no means do I mean that. But Beckman, I felt, was encouraging. I saw a little glimmer of something there from Beckman this weekend, and that was nice to see. Yeah, again, as mentioned with De Grassi, I don't blame De Grassi for what happened with the contact. De Grassi went into the corner, he outshot himself, but he was already here, and David Beckman turned in on the back of him, obviously expecting De Grassi to then make the corner, which he didn't. So a little bit of a rookie mistake there from Beckman. I'm going to allow it. He's only like a few races into his campaign. Of course, he did a couple of rounds for Andretti previously. But this is his first full season in Formula E, adapting to the Gen 3 Evo car, in a team that's adapting, I would say, to this new Porsche powertrain that's old for the grid, but new for the Kiro race squad. But he did have signs of encouragement there. Like I said, I don't think it was going to be points, but it was nice to see him on the fringes of the top 10, and that was quite encouraging. So yeah, for David Beckman, it's going to be just 1 point on the board to him, but escapes a lottery, and I think that's fair for him. So yeah, David Beckman, hope to see more of him to come, and I hope he can make the flag next time. 1 to Beckman. So then guys, those were the runners and riders of the Mexico E-Prix. Let me know down in the comment section below, did I score any drivers too high, any too low? As mentioned, I apologise if I've missed any crashes, incidents, things that should have I've talked about and I haven't. I really have just watched a bit of qualifying and the race, unfortunately due to work schedules and things. But I hope for next time I'll be off work and I can sit down and I can do a proper job. I can do this series justice, but for now it is what it is, if that makes sense, and I apologise for that. But without further ado, let's take a look at the standings, shall we? It's on the screen now for you. We're only 2 rounds in, but Costa leads the overall Drivers' Championship in real life, and he takes the title so far here in the second round. It's got a long way to go, though. Long way to go, and no one is out of it, are they? No one at all. There's a lot to play for in this series. You know how I like to award bonus points. Once the season settles down and we get a pecking order, then I will criticise the drivers rightly for underperforming. We're just in that early stages of the season at the moment now, where I'm sort of like letting the rookies have leniency a little bit there. I'm letting the experienced drivers settle into new teams and things. I have to give a few races before I start getting really ruthless, but trust me, it will come. A massive thank you as always to JW Talks Motorsport, of course, JW97, my mate Joe. Thank you so much for the driver icons in the corner of the screen. Thank you so much for the scoreboard that you've done as well, buddy. Really do appreciate it, mate. I really do. Thank you so much for all your time and effort that was put into making these and keeping it updated as well. And thanks to you guys, as always, for your continued support watching the series and commenting as well. It really does mean a lot. So, I will see you all in February for the double header at Diriyah, I believe it is. I'm going to get it right at some point in this video, aren't I? Hopefully it's the end. But yeah, I'll see you all then for the next Formula E stuff. If you're a regular to the channel, then I'll see you on Friday for my F1 prediction video, where I predicted where the constructors were going to finish at the start of the season, just based on season testing. Yeah, I think I got that wildly wrong anyway. And just in general, there'll be videos out every Tuesday and Friday at 6 PM, as you know. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and as always, much love.